Welcome to Leadership Development News, Profiles and Practice of Top Performers. I'm Dr. Rally Nadler. Dr. Kathy Greenberg and I have been doing this show now for 20 years, and we're excited to bring tips, tools for you and the people that you support to be your best. And today we're going to have a unique guest talking about peak performance in a healing wonderland. So you may be wondering what that wonderland is, and we'll let you know in just a moment. And so some of the aspects that we like to talk about, from leadership development, what a challenging time this is for us. We like to say everything is more. And so whatever the emotions you have, you probably have more of them. Anxiety, uh, pressure, stress, loneliness. And so you have all that. And then the other reason that we like doing this, the second reason why leadership's so challenging, we're not as self-aware as we think we are. We think we're better drivers. We think we're better cooks. We think we're better lovers. We're not as aware as we think we are. So lots happening. We're not as aware. And then guess what? The third challenge, we're on autopilot. And if you stay on autopilot, you stay average. Well, we don't want you to stay average. And so that's why we try to give you a couple tips and tools. And what we like to talk about, this is the fourth piece of this, is slow thinking. And I like to say we've outsourced our thinking, that we don't have to think anymore. We have AI. And so let's take the shortcut. Well, we're here now, Kat, and to help people, what's better shortcuts? So let's slow down a little bit. And how do we give them shortcuts? But they're better shortcuts than autopilot. And so, Kat, welcome to the show. And I know you know our guest here, and I'll let you run with that.
No worries. So, it's funny you're talking about how much all of us stay on autopilot and stay average. And yesterday I was at a local coffee shop here in Palm Beach, and they had a beautiful sign on the wall, and it said, "Drink coffee, do stupid things faster." I was like, "Oh man, that's my kind of sign." But that's what happens, right? Right? We don't slow down, and we get ourselves into places where our default mode network is just running
Right.
amok, right? And then we go into worry, which leads into all the wonderful other nuances of gloom and doom, right? Well, today we're I'm excited and we're really happy to welcome a wonderful guest that I just recently met. And just to give you some context, we generally have thought leaders on the show in the realm of leadership and teams and organizational effectiveness, all focused on our favorite topic, obviously, emotional brilliance. And today we're going to get a little bit of a different sense of what it takes to be a top performer. And it stems from my recent interest in a global conference that I went to with one of our colleagues, Relly, Dr. Zaina Gosu. And we went there because A, I am doing research for my new book, Global Leadership Future Proof. And B, because Zaina has a beautiful clinic, as you know, in Lebanon, and wanted to see what were the latest and greatest at the Biohack conference in Austin. And so we toddled down there, the two of us, and embraced the entire program. And one of the amazing people that I came across was Tania de Jong. It was totally serendipity. I really signed up at the last minute, had no idea what I was going to go look and ponder on. I really wanted to see the equipment and what people were doing in this space for the future of well-being. And this woman singularly blew me away, not only on the big stage, I think there were close to 7,000 people in the audience, talking about the use of one of her acclaimed beautiful talents, which is her music, but talking about the use of new types of psychedelics in human performance. But I went to her breakout session, and I'll let her speak more to that. But in that breakout session, a group of total strangers created a circle of compassion through song and music.
Mm.
When I left there, my whole body was reset. My brain
Wow.
was reset, And I have been in pain now for almost a year, as everybody probably knows. I'm waiting for yet a third back surgery. And it was the first hour of pain free beauty that I had
Wow.
experienced in a very long time with a group of wonderful, just strangers who wanted to help each other. So let me tell you a little bit about Tania before I bring this amazing human being on. She is the co founder and executive director of Mind Medicine Australia, which made global history through the world's first scheduling of psilocybin and MDMA in 2023. Tania has garnered an international reputation as an award-winning social entrepreneur, acclaimed soprano, inspirational speaker, and magnificent storyteller. She's a creative alchemist, a philanthropist, and spiritual journey woman. She is a passionate leader for social change. Her mission is to change the world one voice at a time. She regularly presents on creativity, innovation, leadership, purpose, psychedelic assisted therapies, mental health and well being at major conferences and events around the world and across the business, I'll say, industries and government. She's heavily involved in all kinds of entrepreneurial and innovative programs. She is one of Australia's most successful female entrepreneurs. She's developed over 6 businesses, 4 charities. She can really wow you when she is in her space, and I wish we were all here singing with her. But Tania was named in the 100 Women of Influence, the 100 Australian most influential entrepreneurs, and was named one of the 100 most influential people in psychedelics globally. Her TED Talk obviously has sparked great global interest. You can get more information about all the wonderful things that Tania is doing here at her website, Tania, Tania, at Tania de Jong, that's TaniaDeJong.com.au. And we'll be posting that, of course, at the the Leadership Development News website. So without further ado, Tania, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Kathy, and what a beautiful introduction. And it was such an honor to meet you in Texas, and an unexpected surprise to meet you and Zena together. And I think Zena's actually going to sign up for a certificate in psychedelic assisted therapies, which is lovely.
Great. I'm laughing because Zena has had so much training, our colleague, and she is a inspiration, learning.
Yeah.
Um, so Tanya, I have not met you before, but we're really welcome to the show. We have some questions that we want to ask you, but we always like to kind of get a little background on kind of like what's been some of the influences, on you, growing up and to, get to where you are now. So we get a little some of that foundation.
Yeah, well, I suppose the major influence that has been with me since I was about 12 years old when I learned about this is that I'm the daughter and granddaughter of Holocaust survivors.
Hmm.
And so this was a profound time when I was 12 years old to learn that my family, my family's history, my ancestral lineage, and the fact that so many of my ancestors were murdered, in the most shocking way. And that was a very hard thing for me to come to terms with. It still is. And I spent many years um, trying to face into that trauma that I believe
Good.
I carry epigenetically because
Wow.
this was in the cells of my mum, who was a little 3-month old when Hitler came into Vienna, where she was born. My mum was born in Vienna, and of course my Polish grandparents. And yeah, so it's been a very interesting journey because of that. In spite of that, I've been able to, at some level, biohack enough to be able to be in this world, to be as present as I can be, whilst knowing that that happened to my family, and to radiate as much optimism and hope and compassion and light as I can into the world. to bring the shadows into the light, I guess. So that was a big part of my background. And then I was also a top tennis player, and my mum, in fact, was a quarterfinalist at Wimbledon. And
Hmm.
I played tennis on a tennis scholarship in the US when I was 18, in fact, in Texas. And so I was a top sports woman. And then I had a coaching business. I studied law. And my real passion, though, was always singing. And so I've really committed a lot of my life to becoming a better performer, to finding my voice and helping other people find their voice. And when I say my voice, I don't just mean my singing voice, I actually mean my meaning and purpose and helping others find their meaning and purpose. And I'm awfully sorry, we're going to have to pause for 1 second because this was fully charged and now all of a sudden it's not. So can you hold on one moment while I go
Yeah.
and get the charger? I'm really sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. We'll continue here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So just to give the audience a little bit more context, in the large auditorium, there was a session, and David Asprey is the creator of the biohack conferences, and he had a panel of experts, several of whom were psychiatrists and authors, and Tania joined them as a practitioner. And he was asking of this panel, Relly, I'm sure you'd be interested in having heard this, what were their favorite and least favorite experiences with psychedelics?
Hmm.
And it was a fascinating conversation, and I did get to speak with the psychiatrist afterwards as well. And I think what we're seeing and what Tania's speaking to with regard to a certification that Zaina is going to be joining in on is the use now of psychedelics. And I'm sure that everybody has been looking at the headlines over the past couple of months because our current government has, of course, signed into action the use of these types of programs. And they're not just for people who are suffering, they are for people who are looking for new ways of creating peak performance through self-empowerment.
Hmm.
So the thing that drew me to Tania's breakout was her comments about the importance of understanding the professional application and certification of the use of these modalities. And I may very well join Zaina because, as you know, really, 99% of my population are military and law enforcement.
Hmm.
And as a result, they're spending a lot of attention on this. And in fact, I'll be speaking at the National Tactical Officers Association Negotiators Conference coming up October out in Tucson, Arizona. So hopefully you're back plugged in here.
I am. I'm good. I'm all good.
Perfect, perfect.
I mean, actually, a very interesting piece of news has just come out. You were talking about just really how prominent these medicines are becoming. And I just saw an article in the Telegraph in the UK yesterday where a lady who had very serious Alzheimer's, like she was unable to speak, she was unable to go to the bathroom or do anything for herself, had a 5 gram dose of psilocybin, and now she's in complete remission, speaking, dancing, going to the bathroom herself. I mean, it's really
Wow.
extraordinary. Yeah. And ever since I took these medicines 10 years ago, I always felt that there was enormous potential for these medicines to be used for cognitive decline. So it's incredible to see that coming through now.
So say a little bit, kind of more about kind of what like we're very interested in the neuroscience, like what's going on with some of this, and then we'll kind of transfer into the singing piece. But like what do you notice that's happening, from the
Well,
brain?
well, Kathy was talking about the default mode network before, and
Right.
psilocybin is known to bypass the default mode network of the brain, that part of our brain that is keeping us stuck and in our
Right.
repetition and programs and rigid thinking, that we've usually adopted since childhood. And
Hmm.
so what we're seeing now is this incredible opportunity for people to break out of those rigid, stuck thought patterns. I'm not good enough, things won't work out, the things that we tend to
Yeah.
say to ourselves, and to actually give people agency around their own healing process as well. Because what starts to happen is you get this, you can see behind me actually, there's a brain
Right.
behind me. You can see this incredible neurogenesis of the brain that occurs when people ingest psilocybin, and all of these different parts of the brain that have maybe just been shut off from one another start reconnecting again. And one of the things that really characterizes anyone who's feeling depressed or trauma or anxiety or alone is just this real sense of separation. To give people that really sense of connection again that you can see behind me, that reconnection of the different hemispheres of the brain, that's a real gift. And that remains flexible for quite a few weeks after a full therapeutic dose of psilocybin or another psychedelic. And in that period of time, with the assistance of someone skilled, a skilled coach or a therapist or someone like that, you can actually start to remap and reset the
Hmm.
pathways of your life, your relationships, your work, your home situation, whatever it may be that needs to change and needs to improve. So it gives everyone a chance to start again, really. And how often do we get that chance?
No, and I want to just chime in here because, as you may recall, Relly, and Tanya doesn't know this about me, I did 4 days of ketamine and then a stellate ganglion block as part of a research study, along with Matthew, my partner, when he was being asked to participate in something called the Spec Ops cocktail through the Stella Centers in Chicago, which was a large research project specifically targeting this ability to rewire the brain, most specifically for post traumatic stress and some for TBI and CTE. But the profound impact it had on me, because I didn't have depression or any kind of significant pain at the time. But as we go to commercial break here, what I want to remind everybody is something Tanya just said. It allows us to reconnect. And I had not heard joy in 20 some years. And when
Mm.
I woke up on day 3 from my very brief ketamine experience, for the first time in over 20 years, I heard the smiles. I heard the smiles on people. I heard their voice. I heard the laughter that had always annoyed me in the past. So this stuff is very real, and it has profound impacts on peak human performance. So don't go away. You're listening to Leadership Development News. Come right back to empower yourself to turn challenges into lasting success.
Welcome back to Leadership Development News, Profiles and Practices of Top Performers. We're talking with Tania de Jong, who's talking about peak performance, and we just talked about some of the psilocybin and other MDA aspects that can help us. And you talked about one of the things, the default mode network, and we know about the default mode network that it can typically either go into worry, which I think probably most of us go into. It could go into imagination. Martin Seligman also would call that the imagination network. But I think for most of us, we get stuck in that loop. So say a little bit more about, if we break that loop, what are the neural pathways, what is getting activated?
Yeah, so as we discussed before, there is a huge amount of empathy that is activated, compassion, kindness, and generosity. I mean, it's incredible to see the transformation that I've seen
Hmm.
from senior executives who've taken these medicines and how present they become. A lot of them have often trouble listening, they're distracted, they're, you know, living in an ADHD world.
Wow.
And to actually get that sense of presence back, that sense of gratitude for everything. Like I have never seen a leaf, a cloud, a tree, a seashell, or anything the same since I took these medicines. It's really quite remarkable. And this sense of feeling that you are part of everything and everything is part of you. And this is something that in a dualistic sort of world that we're living in, it's such a binary world too. Yes, no, right, wrong,
Right.
making people wrong all the time. This is really about giving people that gift of oneness. And we really have lost a lot of that. In ancient times, we felt that we were part of the land and the land felt part of us. But now we're talking to boxes and screens more than we do to one another. And that makes us into these cardboard cutouts of human beings, which we're not. We're actually human beings wanting to live an incredible life and contribute back and make a meaningful difference to our communities and the planet and leave the place better than we came into it. So to do that, we need to have these mystical experiences, these altered state experiences.
Hmm.
Very important for leaders to have these altered state experiences and not just, not everything is here. It's really in so
Yeah.
many different dimensions.
So I just got a question. So what part of the brain is activated if we're bypassing the default mode network? Which part is? I mean, I understand
I
what.
don't know. I don't think they actually know all of that yet. There's still a lot of
Okay.
research going on to that. But what people do know is that people are much higher functioning after having these medicines. And there's a lot of research to suggest that, for example, entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley who are microdosing, so having small subperceptual doses of psilocybin, are leapfrogging their competitors who are not having those microdoses because
Hmm.
they're just more switched on, they're more present, they're more here, they're more awake. And we're living in a world where it's really
Yeah.
important to be awake and present. There's so much negativity going on, so much division,
Yeah.
so much loneliness and isolation. And people are longing for connection, deep
Right.
connection, not just social media connection, but real connection.
Hmm.
I think one of the things that I've been able to visualize for myself, really, and maybe we can do this with the audience, is that beautiful brain of ours. And if we look at the frontal cortex, our executive functioning brain might be number one, right? That prefrontal executive cortex.
Right.
And number two could be the default mode network, right?
Hmm.
Almost,
Right.
kind of that middle area. And then
Yeah.
if we kind of steer more towards where our eye sockets are, but below the frontal executive functioning, is that salience network.
Right.
And that's to
Yeah.
me, that's the secret sauce. And then
Yep.
number four is where our limbic system is, and
Hmm.
that brain stem.
Yeah.
And so, how I see this, and the audience can just kind of visualize this with us. If you want to be a peak performer, you have to get out of that number two and go into three or one. Because if you stay in number two in that default
Right.
mode network and you're
Right.
always sending those modulating and somewhat depressive worry messages down your limbic
Yeah.
system through your spinal cord, you're crippling your capacity
Yeah.
to use that salience network and that executive brain. And it's so important for us to recognize, as you say beautifully every week, we stay in, we stay in fast mode, we forget about slow thinking, and we stay in that default mode network, which makes
Yeah.
us average. I
Yeah.
think what Tanya is speaking to here, and I hope the audience gets this, you don't have to be traumatized or sick to need the effects of these beautiful psychedelics and the other, we'll say, healing modalities of these processes that she's going to be certifying people in. And I thought it was so important to bring her to our audience
Hmm.
to speak to the importance of what kind of people can improve by these
Right.
modalities. Maybe a
And
couple
actually,
of case
Kathy,
studies, right?
sorry to interrupt for a moment,
No,
but actually that's what brought me to psychedelics, really. Like the reason that I've been biohacking mind, body, and spirit is yes, because I want to be a peak performer, right? So that was singing, that was leadership, that was a whole lot of things. And, I founded 4 charities and 6 businesses. And that is because I have not allowed myself to stay stuck in that default mode network that could easily second guess me, that could say, well, I'm not good enough to do that. And I had lots of people say, well, you're never going to set up that charity or this or the other. But I was always trying to go beyond the
Hmm.
limit.
Hmm.
And the psychedelics really enabled me to open that window way more.
Yeah. So with this, I think it is that salience network, from my understanding, is kind of where the emotional intelligence is. What has value, what pops up in
Mhm.
between the default mode network and executive network. And so a lot of it, to zero in on that. But so say about like your certification and do you have to have a guide and how does that work?
Well, there's a few things here. So,
Yeah.
in terms of our certificate in psychedelic assisted therapies, that's a world leading course to accredit coaches, therapists, clinicians, and others interested in working in this field with a world leading certificate. And we have people like Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, Dr. Gabor Mate, and others on our faculty. And we've graduated 750 therapists, clinicians, coaches so far. And many of them rank it as the best professional development training they've done, which is very
Wow.
encouraging and very good. In terms of taking the medicine, so it's a separate thing. So for those of you out there listening, going, oh, I really think I want to try psychedelic assisted therapies, I really encourage you to work with people who you've done your due diligence on. So at the moment in the US, where your program is, these medicines are not currently legal, except for in states like Oregon and I think Colorado, where you can attend licensed retreats and you can actually undertake these treatments in a licensed retreat setting, which I really would encourage people to do. But, check out who's giving the medicine, who's holding the space, look at reviews or ask others who've sat with these guides to make sure they're okay. I don't recommend that people go into a field like that's behind you rally and go and pick mushrooms because we don't always know what are the best
Right,
mushrooms
right.
and what are the right mushrooms. And, there's a real risk to picking the wrong mushrooms. And I don't recommend people do these sorts of medicines in a therapeutic way on their own to begin with, certainly not. So at Mind Medicine Australia, we can give you advice. We've got a list of all the legal, clinical,
Hmm.
and therapeutic centres around the world on our website, which is mindmedicineaustralia.org.au. But I really suggest people take care, and set and setting are really important before you do these medicines. That means the setting that you're in is critical and your mindset going in. So that's setting the right intention for the experience and really sitting with yourself and really being able to access a lot of your inner landscape. Because that's the difference between these sorts of medicines and, say, taking a Panadol or an antidepressant. This is not a quick fix. This is about really resetting your brain. As Michael Pollan said, How to Change Your Brain. His best-selling book was about that, and there's a Netflix series on that as well. And so, yes, as Kathy says, this is not just for people who've got trauma or depression. That being said, we're all carrying some kind of trauma, whether it's our own or our ancestors or collective trauma. living in a world that's pretty traumatic right now. And we all want to find some peace and some unity and compassion within our hearts for what's going on so that we don't become binary in our viewpoints and that we can actually, as you said, not outsource our brains. It really frightens me how many people have outsourced their brains, that people have really gone to all the AI engines, and that's the ultimate. But even before that, we were outsourcing everything to the government. We were letting governments tell us how we should manage our health and things like that. At the end of the day, we need to be the CEO of our own lives. And I always say, become the chief medical officer of your own life too. Really, really start to do your research as leaders on what's going to serve you and don't take things that are toxic for you. There's a lot of toxic stuff in this world, food, the air we breathe, the environmental toxins. And we need to be really mindful about what we're doing, because if we're going to lead, then we need to be healthy leaders and we need to be great role models for who we're leading.
As you're speaking, Tanya, I have to say, and Relly will get a smile out of this, the whole time we were at this biohack conference, I don't know how many vendors were there, but I did at least 2 modalities a day. So you were one of my modalities there, Tanya, the singing healing, which was dramatically successful, at least for me. And it was such a charming environment to be in when you're laying on the floor. Nobody lays on the floor at a conference. Like you've just been walking outside and now you're walking, all over the carpet. But none of us hesitated. We laid down on the carpet. There were 6 or 7 of us in the circle at a time, and then everybody walked around us with great love and a great voice that you led in your beautiful voice there, Tanya. And the thing that I just want our audience to picture are these people laying in
Recording stopped.
laying in a circle in the middle and having these total strangers sing to you who don't sing, who've never had a voice and just came to think of how they could be involved but didn't know they would be singing. And they're just tones, right? They're tones that create healing. But the thing that I wanted to explain here is every day I did a different modality. So that I could learn about the future of how our brains will do best in peak performance. And we know Olympic athletes and high performing people have been using these modalities for a long time. But the one thing I want to just give to our audience as a gift today is something that Zaina said to me every day. She said, you want to be your best self, and you have pain, and many of us just have regional pain, just minor arthritis or a stiff neck or just a sore ankle, just something. And she said, please stop eating sugar and wheat. She said, if I see you put one more piece of candy in your mouth, she said, I'm going to ravage your bag and steal everything in there. And what I had to and I know this, it's not like I don't know this, I don't do gluten, but you forget as a human being that we seek pleasure, right? We need those endorphins. And so we are grabbing things for ourselves on a daily basis that aren't necessarily feeding our leadership and our capacity, right?
Right. Totally agree with you 100%. Like sugar and gluten and things like that are just so bad. And most people are just not able to digest that and retain a good brain. So if we want to be good in our brains and our leadership, we shouldn't be eating stuff like that for sure.
How did you and your husband find this extraordinary voice for advocacy and determination to bring these modalities to the population that you've been able to successfully celebrate with over 700, certified practitioners?
Yeah, I mean, we're philanthropists and social entrepreneurs, so we're really committed to social change and systemic change. So we don't just do things in a small piecemeal way. We're looking at overall systems and how we can change the overall system. And once we'd had these medicines ourselves 10 years ago, and after the second time we had them a year later, it's very important to say these medicines are not at all addictive in the slightest. Like it took me a whole year to go back and have the courage to go and have another session. And so once we'd had the second session of this, we became convinced that all of the other issues that we were seeing in the charities that we founded 6 charities between us. So things like homelessness, domestic violence, loneliness, disabilities, unemployment, all these sorts of disadvantages that many people are facing, they are underpinned by poor mental health, usually a lack of self-esteem, a lack of self-love, a lack of community around them as well. So really feeling isolated. And to give people that gift of feeling connected again, as I said before, and then actually to give them a sense of loving themselves again is really important. I also do that through my other charity, the singing charity.
Mm.
And it is really about giving people that sense that, well, we're not alone. We never have been. And each of us are here for a reason. And we need to go back to that and find that love for ourselves, that care for ourselves, because as leaders, we tend to abandon ourselves. We abandon good eating, we abandon good sleep, we abandon really being present with people because we're always in a hurry. So we
Mm.
abandon all the things that we actually really care about that made us leaders to begin with. And we've somehow lost sight of the things that really matter in life, that make a life worth living. And that's very sad, in my opinion.
Well, we're going to stay on this subject. We're going to go to a quick break. And maybe when we come back, you can think about providing some suggestions for supporting everyone in the workplace using music and other
Mhm.
modalities that really inspire us to greatness. Don't go away. You're listening to Leadership Development News.
Welcome back to Leadership Development News, Profiles and Practice of Top Performers. We're talking with Tania de Jong. During the break, we said we got to get back on. We got to record this because we're talking about what happens in those sessions, and what would a guide, I don't know if you call it a guide or licensed practitioner and your certification, in that session. And you were talking about things that basically both Kathy and I, as certified coaches within International Coach Federation, it is more clients focused. We're not there to direct them. But why don't you pick that one up and tell us how that goes in a session let's say someone does psilocybin and they're with a licensed person.
Yes. So, generally speaking, if you go to therapy or something like that, then it's usually the therapist is often giving you advice. You're telling them your problems, they're giving advice. It's all at a cognitive level.
Right.
But this is really about going into the body. And one of the things that is often said about these medicines, they're often called the God molecule or something like that. And the reason for that is that the medicines give you what you need, not what you want. So you may wish for certain types of transformation, but you might entirely get the opposite of that because you need that. And one of the really important things about the attributes of the therapist or the coach or whoever is sitting with you is that they're really on an even plane with you. The client is really driving the agenda.
Mhm.
And in fact, some clients will lie there with their eye shades on and the playlist playing, and I devise beautiful playlists, of course, because that's one of my passions. But they will lie there for 4 straight hours not saying anything at all, and that's actually very good because it means that they're having a very interior journey, that it's probably pretty somatic in their body as well. And so maybe there'll be no dialogue until they come down from the medicine experience, and then they'll have some dialogue with
Mm.
the person who's sitting with them and start to unpack, which is called integration. And one of the most important aspects of psychedelic assisted therapies is the integration process. So this is not just about taking a medicine for the sake of it. It really is using the medicine to help you integrate the insights that you learn
Yeah.
during the experience back into your life.
Yeah.
It's
That's so
really an
important.
important thing. Yeah.
Some of my first books were processing the adventure experience and then just processing the experience, just because so much happens and how do we integrate that? And I think that does probably go back to that salience network. What has
Mhm.
value? What has insight? Where are you with that? So that's what makes so much sense of what you're saying and what these people certified. What does that your program look like? How long is it? How many sessions?
Yeah, so our certificate in psychedelic assisted therapy is the next intake starting in July, and it goes for 14 weeks. 13 weeks are online, and then there's a 6-day residential intensive where they use holotropic breath work as the analog for the medicine for the altered state practice. And the people, all the different disciplines, and this is what's really beautiful, is you have psychiatrists and doctors and nurses and occupational therapists and coaches and pharmacists, and they're all coming together in this one space. And usually these professions don't tend to collide very much. They're usually pretty siloed. But in this case, you're getting this whole circle of beautiful humans who care passionately about getting their clients well and succeeding and having a brilliant life. And they're trying to come together in these residentials and they're sitting for one another in these altered states. And the learnings are profound. And probably the residential is where the rubber really hits the road and they learn the therapeutic skills that they need to safely hold patients and clients through these sorts of treatments. It's extraordinary. People should go on our website. We have a special CPAT website. So mindmedicineaustralia.org is .au is our website, but on there's a separate page also that links to our training website, which is CPAT, our CPAT website. And I encourage people to go and have a look on there. And Kathy, we were talking a bit about the singing as well, and that beautiful session at Texas with I think it was about 50 or so people in the room, and then we took it in turns in the center. And again, that's an altered state too. So you would have felt, as you said, it felt like you reset your brain. And so the people in the center are experiencing a sound bath, which is created by everyone on the outside. So we usually think of sound healing as just lying on the floor and someone's playing beautiful instruments, but this was a much more active sort of sound healing bath, which was designed again to activate the right temporal lobe of the brain to help people release endorphin. And singing together has been shown to make us smarter, healthier, happier, and more creative. It improves our memory, language, and concentration. Not only do we breathe together, but our hearts literally start to beat together. And
Mm.
that's what I felt, in Texas, that we had this group of complete strangers. It's always like that, but this was a particularly beautiful group, I thought. And the resonance, and it's about really feeling each other's resonance because actually we are actually experiencing this life together. It's just we forget about it because we feel so individuated and on our own path, but we're here together.
Yeah, let me just share something else with the audience about the miracle of that experience. And I use the word miracle because there's no way else for me to describe it. I don't have the language to be able to describe that experience other than it was miraculous. And
Mhm.
what I found even more compelling, you're in a room full of strangers. Nobody knows what they're there for. All of a
Yeah,
sudden,
right.
we realize, okay, there's no chairs. Okay, so what are we going to do? The lights go out. And then you had a beautiful human being that was there using uh,
Hmm.
some sound bowls,
That's right.
and really just kind of creating a little bit of an ambiance. But it was the strength and beauty of your voice that allowed others to chime in to the supportive healing that could have been any workplace. This could have been any workplace in the world where a group of human beings had come together to celebrate each other without having to say a thing.
Mm.
And that was really, to me, a gift, in addition to a display of the capacity for humans to heal each other if they
Yes.
allow the mental model to let go. And I was actually stuck on the ground. I couldn't get up because my back locked. And it was so sweet. All these human beings ran towards me to lift me up off the floor for no other reason except that they felt joy in knowing that I was being cared for. You know,
Mm.
and you don't see that every day. And wouldn't it
Mhm.
be a beautiful thing if we could experience that in our workplace, let alone in our communities where we're coming together with others to feel communion
Yeah.
of some kind, right?
Yeah, and as you say, like actually the fact that we can heal others, you don't have to be a doctor to heal others. You just need to set an intention of healing. So by having 40 or so souls, set an intention of healing the six or seven people in the center of the circle.
Mm.
It was really remarkable how many people told me that even a day or two later, they said, "Oh, I don't have the back pain or the neck pain anymore that I had since that session."
Wow.
Yeah, it's just intention. The power of intention is so strong.
And then Kat, I know you've had these back surgeries, and as we've talked, I know it's been challenging. So you said you were pain free for a while.
Yep. Yep, for that whole hour and then for the hour after that. And it was it was just a beautiful experience for me. And
Yeah.
I know the other people in the room felt it as well because I don't know, Tanya probably doesn't know this, but for the rest of the conference, for those 50 people that were together in that room, we remembered each other. And it's not like we knew anybody. We didn't introduce ourselves, but it was nice to go by people and everybody would pat each other on the back or grab someone's hand or just make eye contact or just smile. And it created a very powerful connection. And couldn't
Yeah.
you imagine a space where all of us lived where that
Wow.
was a daily experience?
Yeah. That's so important. And I think that many people are looking to find their voice. A lot
Yeah.
of people feel silenced even as leaders, a lot of
Yeah.
people feel silenced.
So maybe give us like a case study before we end here. It's
Mhm.
one that, whether it's the music and or the psychedelics that you've seen that you want to leave us with.
Look, I've seen so much transformation, but just recently, one of my closest friends, who's a very senior executive of one of the really big consulting firms, I won't say which, he experienced a high dose of psilocybin with a small dose of MDMA, and I had known this person for 20 years, and I knew there was something going on, but I never knew what. And in this experience, he had a lot of difficulty. I could tell that he was having trouble breathing, and not that I should say to everyone, not that you have trouble, but that's
Right.
your psyche that's doing that for you. And he was really struggling, and we used a lot of different things to get him to move. And then by the end of the session, he was literally shaking his body in all different ways, trying to shake out what was sitting in his cells. And I still didn't know what that was that was sitting in his cells. And then after the ceremony, he said to me that he had been sexually abused for 2.5 years, from the time he was 7 years old, and had never told anyone about it.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was just so devastating to hear this. And that also he tried to resuscitate his father when his father had a heart attack and he'd failed to do so. And ever since then he couldn't breathe properly because he'd given his father this breath and he thought that he'd failed to save him.
Ooh.
Isn't it amazing? And so we have all these patterns in ourselves. And so ever since then, this person has been so present. He's been feeling everything. He said, "This is really hard. I have to feel everything." And I said, "Yeah, you do have to feel everything. You have to feel it all, because otherwise your body cannot repair what has happened, because the trauma is sitting in that
Yeah.
right frontal lobe. And
Um,
as you all know, you're a neuroscientist, really, and it's all sitting there, and it's blocking him from being his full, radiant, brilliant self.
uh,
And now all of a sudden, I see the emotional brilliance of this man. And in fact, he's channeling now. It's like he's reading the room so
uh,
incredibly. Like, so all of his direct reports, he says, "Oh my gosh, all my meetings now, everyone's like crying because they feel like they can open up to me now." No, he hasn't told them what he's done, but there's something
uh,
open
That's right.
there. It's really beautiful. I mean, and then in terms of the singing, well, we're seeing utter transformation through the choirs, with one voice choirs, people who've not got jobs, who found jobs through having help with their resume. We've had marriages, we've had people who found lifelong friends, people who've been able to go off their antidepressants. Singing and psychedelics actually have quite a lot in common. They're both altered states of consciousness when they're done properly.
yeah.
And altered states of consciousness can really help us to become all we can be.
I'm just beaming because I am so happy that we were able to get you on the show. And
Yeah.
you've built multiple businesses, charities, and global movements, Tanya. And we're so very, very grateful for your presence and for all the work you're doing in the world. And I'm going to do my best to be at this certification for my
I'd
own
love you to,
business.
Kathy. I really would love you to. And Rally too. I mean, Rally, seriously, you're an interesting, what a human being. I've been reading up about you.
Oh, thank you. And Kat mentioned emotional brilliance, and I kind of got a shot of that of what you were just saying. That's really, we wrote that book together, Kathy and I. But it sounds like that brilliance, and you're taking the cover off of it, and so that can
Right.
really shine. So it's another kind of thing about emotional brilliance, Kat. Go ahead.
Well, no, it's so interesting because, especially in corporate life, and I'm sure you talk about this all the time, we're often wearing a mask of who we think we want to
Right.
be perceived. We wear the suit, we wear the mask, but it's not who we really are. And if only people could, as you say, lift off the cover, lift off the mask, and, because we want the real you. That's who we're looking for, not not
Wow.
not the cover copy. Right?
That's so great.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm
good.
looking for the real, I'm looking for the real person always. I'm looking for what is underneath layer.
Yeah,
So as we know, as you take one layer off, then there's the next and the next, and what's sitting underneath it all. Yeah.
beautiful. So give us the website again, and then we'll have people go to that, and then we'll bring us to a close. So if people want to get more
Yeah.
information,
So my website is Tania de Jong, TaniaDeJong.com, and mindmedicineaustralia.org.au. And we are indeed the charity that made history by the rescheduling of psilocybin and MDMA into controlled medicines in Australia, which means that some very, very unwell people
yeah.
can get access to treatments when nothing else has worked, which is really
Yeah.
important.
All right. Well, what a great show. I'm definitely moved by it. Go ahead, Kat. You can bring us home.
Oh, I'm just grateful that our audience checks in with us every week to learn more about how to tune up every week to be a better version of yourself. So thanks for tuning in with us. Until next time, thanks for joining Leadership Development.